Oh, the water. I miss seawater. I miss the salty mother of all. How exciting this is. Only after a year that we first visited Mallorca as the nomad eclectics, and there we came across the necropolis de Son Real, a clue of the prehistoric inhabitation of these Balearic Islands. Now we are in Menorca, the second largest island from the Balearic complex. Talayotic people, culture that inhabited the island and their settlements are dated back around 1200 BC. Some of the structures that this culture left behind them have been named by later archaeologists and antiquarians. One of the most famous structure that appears on the island in several different sites are the taulas. These very unique T-shaped cyclopean megalithic structures. But to me it resembles the Tau cross, a very ancient Egyptian symbol. Now, you know, these correlations are made by the speculative and imaginative human mind. I would still consider this to be the Tau cross. We are at another site. Literally wherever you go on Menorca, you will come across one from the hundreds of settlements, all laid down by the Talayotic culture. Come across one of the oldest remaining dolmens that reaches back to the 3rd millennium BC. It's over 5,000 years old. This dates it approximately in the same period as the megalithic cultures of Britain and the Orkney Island and Scotland and the entire Britannic Islands. This is the dolmen. Finding yourself among ruins of the past. It's a humbling experience. Today time stands still here. once upon a time there were a buzzing of human endeavors, and we don't know what they were preoccupied with, what was the content of their mind, what was considered by them good, what was considered by them bad.
It's special, isn't it?
One thing that I wasn't very clear about, and I didn't really understand myself, is that Talayotic civilization or culture is a generic term that covers an entire millennia of ever-changing and evolving population. So the most current archaeological thesis breaks down the chronology into three parts: the proto-Talayotic, the Talayotic, and the post-Talayotic periods. Now, the Talayotic period is defined and highlighted by the fact of the structure's appearance that we today call the talayots, the rounded towers, semi-towers, that were the center of their settlement. The proto-Talayotic is the period that describes the transitionary period from the Naviform civilization that were using the Navetas as their settlements into the Talayotic. So it describes a period where the population of this civilization were going through major changes. From a cooperative agricultural society, they were becoming more and more individualistic, and that has been speculated by the found artifacts. More and more jewelry appeared. The Talayotic civilization built the Talayots, and then what the archaeologists, the current archaeological thesis describes as post-Talayotic period, in which the Taulas appeared, the very famous T-shaped megaliths that were probably centered in ceremonial temple precepts. And so that is the most recent innovation within the prehistoric past of this island, and actually is the most recent in a sense that they only started to appear according to the carbon dating done by contemporary archaeologists. It had been dated to be as recent as 120 BC. So just before the Roman Empire appeared and conquered the island and brought with it everything Roman. That wherever you go in Europe, once the Roman Empire appeared, they came, conquered, and with the conquering forces came innovation, infrastructure, roads, methods of trade, coinage, money appeared, and the famous legislative law. Judiciaries appeared, and Rome pushed its central system of management and governance into all these lands where it established itself. I just came from Romania. Romania being at the period vastly occupied by local Dacian, Thracian tribes. But when the Romans arrived, like recently we visited the Celtic past of Britain, and everything there we know about the Celts come from the occupying Roman regime. So Rome truly is responsible for the so-called sophistication of the barbaric tribes, at least if you consider history to be a continuation of progression towards better scientific and material understanding. It's definitely a place that we should visit and dwell in. name?
We were going to the Naveta de Estudons. Naveta is
Estudons.
yes.
So this is Bronze Age. A familiar turf.
And it has funerary purposes only.
Approaching something that predates even the Proto-Talayotic period. So we are coming to structures that were built and inhabited or used by people who settled down here just after 2500 BC. So the first settlers who arrived to the island, we don't know where they come from, but for the first few hundred years they lived a semi-nomadic life, depending on their livestock, mainly goats and sheep, and they started to bury their dead in caves. And once they settled for a few hundred years, comes this period that contemporary archaeologists named the Naviform period, in which they started to build these very recognizable structures, what the locals called navetas. And so these people are previous to the Proto or Talayotic people who built the Talayots and the Taulas. These are their predecessors, Bronze Age. That one comes to the Balearic Islands, more specifically to Menorca, and will spend a week exploring a long bygone civilization. Yes, Menorca is not just sun, beautiful coves, beautiful Mediterranean Sea, great food and summer holidays. Menorca and Mallorca, the two major islands of the Balearic Archipelago, is a place for the wannabe archaeologist, for the history enthusiast, for people who enjoy looking into the past, into bygone civilizations, and try to put their minds and imagination into trying to bring them back to life. The modern world has its perks, has its development, but we must always remember our heritage, our predecessors, the generations of human beings just like you and me, who came before us and built the foundations on which our society of today rests. We must pay them homage, we must pay them respect, and we must distinguish the good deeds from the bad